محمد وآل Muhammad salawat. We're going to begin the program with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Maryam. Please welcome with salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. Can we recite a Surah Fatiha for Abu Zainab and all marhumin?
Now we're very fortunate to have Dr. Ali Reza Bhojani, who will be speaking to us on AI ethics and Islamic thought, challenges and opportunities. Let's welcome him with Salat ala Muhammad wa al Muhammad. Dr. Ali Reza Bhojani is a lecturer at the Al-Mahdi Institute and the co-director at the Center for Intra-Muslim Studies and a research affiliate at the University of Oxford. As a graduate of the Al-Mahdi Institute, his research, teaching and writing focuses on intersections between Islamic legal theory, theology and ethics. His doctoral study, conducted at Durham University, was published as Moral Rationalism and Sharia, published by Routledge in 2015. He's held academic posts at the University of Nottingham, the University of Oxford and the Markfield Institute for Higher Education. And his recent publications included the co-edited volume Visions of Sharia, published by Brill. Dr. Bhojani is an elected council member of the British Association of Islamic Studies and also contributes to a range of knowledge exchange activities within Muslim communities. Beyond his scholarly work, he's a family man, a father to 3 boys, and a practicing optometrist. We're very fortunate to have him once again, and let's welcome him again with Salat ala Muhammad wa al Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It shows that I've been coming here for some time when I get introduced in a way where most of that no longer applies anymore, you know. So, but that's okay. It's a pleasure to be here, and many of you know me well, and you know, it really is a pleasure to be here today. Okay, so today, what I hope to do is actually share, as we can see on the, share some actually ideas and thinking and questions. I'm not really here to teach something, and definitely not here in a preaching capacity, which sometimes you invite me to be in. So yeah, I want to just share some ideas and hopefully have a conversation with you all on challenges and opportunities regarding AI ethics, and Islamic thought. Let's see if this works. Right, okay, good, brilliant. All right, so, I've lost it. I'm sorry, come here.
Just one second.
There we go, I think we're back. Okay, so, you know, questions around discussions of artificial intelligence are exploding around us. Okay, and there's a range of issues which are impacting people consciously or unconsciously. From those who are very young amongst us to those who are more mature, whether they be thinkers, intellectuals, or just us living our everyday lives. Now, some of these questions you could be framing as the new big questions at the intersection of science, religion, and society. And these big questions, when we think about questions of science and technology and religion, are definitely shifting with the emergence of artificial intelligence. This is something which is already pervasive. Sometimes when we speak about things like artificial intelligence, we still think of Terminator, okay? Yeah, or science fiction more generally. Maybe Terminator is a reference too old for some of the people in the, in the audience today. But we can still easily think about science fiction. But artificial intelligence is already pervasive. Okay. For example, the recent and much of recent conversation has been sparked by the uptake of a conversational artificial intelligence tool for interaction. Okay, ChatGPT, which had 1 million users. Okay, within its first week. Some were saying it reached 10 million users faster than Twitter and Instagram and these types of things. Okay, and AI, the development of AI generally is raising lots of ethical questions. And Islamic thought undoubtedly has much to offer these emerging and ongoing debates, undoubtedly. And there's even a push amongst AI ethicists to include voices from Islam. And actually that's how I've got interested in this area of thinking. There were a couple of years ago, there was, and it is that long ago now, 2 years ago, I think, there was a French-based think tank which was looking for a Muslim contribution to questions on AI ethics, and they couldn't find anybody, actually. And so, okay, this person has Islamic ethics in his job title, maybe he can help us out. And it forced me to just start thinking about these very, very important questions. So there's a push amongst AI ethicists to globalize or to decolonize the conversation around these very, very important questions. And in this type of environment, so thinking about those intellectual discussions going on, Muslims have to be very, very careful and wary of just producing apologetic engagements with such questions, where we use them as an opportunity to say Islam has all the answers, for example, and use it as simply as an opportunity to call people towards Islam. These are very, very noble goals to try to invite people towards Islam. All right, but sometimes when we do it superficially, we can be causing ourselves more problems than we're seeking to solve. So we need to be wary of purely apologetic engagements with questions around artificial intelligence. And it seems to me that thinking about the big questions of science, society, and religion today, much of these being pushed forward by questions around artificial intelligence, can actually do lots for Islamic thinking itself. It can be a prompt for philosophical, theological, and jurisprudential deliberation, thinking. And certainly now thinking here in our current setting also has lots of implications for our everyday lived Muslim spirituality and ethics. And what I want to do today is simply open up conversation with a very informed crowd, on some of this potential, about thinking about AI ethics consciously, all right, and some of the challenges that it brings to us as people who are, aspiring to live a God-centered, vision of Islam in a way which contributes to our own lives and the lives of those around us. So what is artificial intelligence, first and foremost? What is it? So this is, again, with the speed things are moving, quite an old definition. So there's a European Commission definition, 2018. Artificial intelligence is, simply framed by the European Commission as systems that develop intelligent behavior by analyzing their environment and taking actions with some degree of autonomy, so with some degree of independence, to achieve specific goals. Okay, and we see, what's around us in terms of artificial intelligence is we can see software-based artificial intelligence and we can see hardware-based artificial intelligence. And we really are surrounded by them. Okay, so hardware devices, we're thinking about advanced robots sometimes, okay, physical robots, autonomous cars. Okay, there may be some which, have driven to this center in a car which has the capacity to self-drive, okay, or self-reverse, okay, whatever it might be, yeah? Drones which are being used across the world right now, okay, which would, which have autonomous functions within them. Software-based ones are even more pervasive, okay, we're not aware of them often, and these are simply voice assistants, counts as artificial intelligence. Image analysis software, speech and face recognition systems, search engines, and chatbots, okay, which is ChatGPT is a form of chatbot. And these will, within months, I think, overtake our traditional search engines. They will, we will not see them for very long. This idea that you Google something and then you get a list of links. It's soon to be history, that form, okay? So we'll speak a little bit more about ChatGPT. Why do these things matter from an ethical perspective? So I think it should be obvious that these things matter, actually. It should be obvious that these things matter. But the scope of their impact is very wide. And we can just give a few headline examples here before we drill down. So these technologies are having and are likely to have increasingly dramatic social impact on labor markets, okay, and the distribution of wealth. Okay, so straight away, people within the industries saw, for example, furlough during COVID, as a model, okay, which is to come. Not because of a pandemic, but because of discussions about a universal wage, all right, when so many of our current jobs can be more effectively and more efficiently fulfilled through automation and artificial intelligence, all right? So you're going to get a mass shift in the labor markets, okay, and with huge impact on the distribution of wealth, okay? Yes, this is going to lead to efficiencies. Can be used for increasing distribution of wealth, but the fact is that these technologies are also leading to dramatic increase in inequalities. For example, the race for developing new forms of these conversational ChatGPT type of interactions is only being led by 5 companies, all right? Because they're the only ones that have the money to invest in the technology and the resources to move these technologies forward. Massive psychological impacts of these technologies. We're seeing, already increasing dependency, okay, upon technologies, deception arising out of the use of human-robot relationships, huge impact on financial systems, with risks of manipulation and collusion. There's impact on the legal systems. Questions of liability, for example. I'm just giving a few examples here. Questions of liability. So the Tesla, which somebody might, in the UK they're not licensed to be automatically driven. In the States they are. All right. So the Tesla, if it's about to crash, okay, and it chooses to preserve the life of the driver, over the life of a pedestrian or 2 pedestrians, who is liable? Is it the programmer? Is it the owner? Okay, who's liable? All right, serious questions about liability. And these are no longer theoretical questions. All right, they're no longer questions for the future. All right, they're questions here and now. All right, liability, we mentioned inequality. So currently, for example, in the States, you have the mass use of artificial intelligence for the early detection of cancers. All right, so for example, pigmented lesions. Okay, through the use of AI systems. Okay, pictures can be taken of something which looks pigmented on a skin. Okay, to speed up the diagnosis of potentially cancerous tumors. So they're brilliant. It's going to increase efficiency. It's going to increase diagnosis. It can save lives. But what's happened, unfortunately, in the States is, of course, the data which they're relying upon, okay, is predominantly based on Caucasian skin. Okay, so skin colors which are not including Black and Asian minorities. So you're getting better health outcomes, okay, for Caucasians and worse health outcomes for non-Caucasians. So you get increased efficiency and increased inequalities, all right? Again, this has impact, all right, on all of these systems that we're living with. Huge impacts on trust, okay? Yeah, and if we just use the example of ChatGPT now, so as a very, very efficient, effective way of producing narrative content, but it's based on predictive models. So it makes huge mistakes and presents them in a very convincing manner. Okay, so we're already seeing in the way social media works, all right, that we're losing trust in the news which we receive. All right, and these are broad stroke issues which not just religious thinkers. So again, actually these 5 things which I will list here: social impact, psychological impacts, financial system, legal system, impact on trust. Again, these are the headlines of the concerns which the European Commission raised in 2018 that we need to consider with the increasing use of artificial intelligence. Okay, so I said that with these types of questions, thinking about, hopefully that gives a sense of just a sense of the scope and the importance, okay, of the potential and current impact of these technologies. I also said that Islam has much to offer, okay, in thinking about these questions. How do we navigate these technologies with regards to their social impact, their psychological impact, their legal impact, so on and so forth, with trust. So Islam has lots to offer. What does it have to offer? All right. So if we just, again, very, very broad strokes, okay, if we think about Islamic ethics as a diversity of traditions of revelation, Islam has produced through the diversity of Islam, okay, through its engagement with the act of revelation to Muhammad Rasulullah, has produced a diversity of intellectual traditions and resources which Muslim thinkers and Muslim peoples rely upon in their everyday life, in their everyday thinking, and in their intellectual pursuits. So very broadly, what might we start with, okay? We could think of Islam's theology and its metaphysics. We could think of Islam's virtue ethics, and we could think of the Sharia and the jurisprudential traditions. So in terms of theology and metaphysics, very, very briefly, of course, God is one. Fundamental. God is one. The source of all existence and the source of all life. I'm emphasizing all here, right? Because actually, remember I said I'm going to raise questions. Does the distinction between artificial even make sense from an Islamic theological point of view? If all creation is attributed to God. Yeah. The Quran says, Allah khalaqakum wa ma ya'malun. All right, that God creates you and that which you make. All right, so whether it's direct causality or whether it's indirect causality, everything has come from God. Existence has purpose theologically for Muslims. All are accountable to Him. And everything is returning to Him. So we could mine the theological resources of Islam to think about some of the questions which are emerging about life, sentience, responsibility, which are coming out of discussions around AI ethics. We have traditions. We don't need to go to traditions of hadith, actually. The Quran says, "Ma min shay'in hatta yusabbihu bihamdi. There is no thing except that it glorifies God. All right? Lots of debates. What does this mean? Is this sentient glorification? Is this non-sentient glorification? Animals are seen to, have a station on the Day of Judgment. Okay, so there seems to be scope within Islamic theology, within Quranic discussions, within the Hadith literature, to broaden our understanding of responsibility beyond the human. Okay, this opens up very, very interesting scope for discussion around some of the theological and philosophical questions which are being discussed around AI ethics. Theology and metaphysics, we could mine that stuff, we could think about that stuff. And actually, I think we must think about those things. Islam's virtue ethics. And when we think about Islam's virtue ethics, it's discourses of cultivation of character. We said that the Prophet was reported to have said, I've been sent for no other reason except to perfect the characteristics of humankind. Take them to the peak of morality. So we might look to the ethical paradigms of the Prophet, the Imams, the companions, wherever it might be, the ascetic practices of the saints of Islam, and say, can these give us models for what it looks like to be virtuous, to program these robots and so on and so forth? We might look to the rational philosophical ethics of Islam. It's akhlaq traditions, where through repetitive action, we cultivate character, right? And that's what the core of the akhlaq discussion, right? Through repeated actions and habits, we develop virtue and characteristics. We might go to this discourse of akhlaq and say, how can this help us with the ethical issues related to AI ethics? We could go to the supra-rational, Sufi or Irfani discussions within Islam of seeking to manifest godly characteristics, in our actions. We might use this as a framework to think about those questions. And of course, we could turn to Sharia and the jurisprudential discourses of Islam. We could turn to our legal theories, the usul al-fiqh, which we could broadly understand as a moral theology, not just a legal theory, and a system of interpretation. Or we could go to fiqh. Here, understanding it not just simply as rules, but as a discourse which seeks to, understand action-orientating guidance. Do, don't do, ought not to do, all right? Regulating all circumstances of life, based on sources, which direct us to what jurists believe God would want us to do, all right? Now, there's no doubt when we think about applied ethical issues in contemporary Muslim thought, the first turn is to the Sharia discourses, rather than to the virtue ethics, akhlaq, or to theology and philosophy. So again, we'll start with the Sharia discourses. And we'll start with fiqh, actually. And thinking about fiqh and artificial intelligence. And just some of the potential. So look, the atomistic, fiqh typically, when I say atomistic, what does it do? Is fiqh gives responses, it gives a system for responding to particular questions, and often concrete questions. Now, using a fiqhi approach to address some of the vast array of questions which are emerging, right, can actually be very, very useful, and very, very important. It can elicit influential, concrete responses to specific questions. So you see, typical amongst contemporary ethicists outside of the Muslim tradition is there's been a move towards discussion of virtue rather than duty. And even with other religious traditions. So I have a colleague from Edinburgh University, Joshua Ralston, who has written a book about Christian approaches to law and Sharia. And he says in that book, Christians, if only we had fatwa. Sometimes we complain about too many fatwas. Right? So he's saying, in the context of us having dilemmas about saving the refugees, who were crossing the Mediterranean Sea, yeah, should we not go against our governments to go out and save these people in the name of Christ? If only we had a fatwa, concrete guidance, right? So he's actually calling for, in Christian ethics, an approach which gives you more concrete, fixed responses to questions, things we take for granted, all right? And sometimes we feel overburdened by them, but they have a rule. So if you imagine here, we could say, okay, can I use a self-driving car? All right? Fiqh is geared up to give you some sort of response or set of responses, often diverse responses, to such questions. What's the status of a love robot? Okay, does this fit into the category of, those who the right hand possess, the Quranic category for illicit relationship? We're laughing, but these are serious questions, right? Okay, actually, these are questions which AI ethicists are dealing with outside of the scope of Islam, all right? Okay, can we use an algorithm to select patients? All right, so I had doctors from within the Shiite community and Muslim community during the pandemic saying this is the first time in our lives in a developed country, okay, that we've had to make decisions, okay, based on limited resources in the UK. So now they were genuinely asking, what do we do when we've got one ventilator? How do we make the decisions? Okay. Now, these types of questions, the fuqaha have thought about, okay, intensely. Might not always agree with their responses, and their responses themselves differ. But they've developed a system for thinking about concrete questions such as this. So can I use an algorithm to decide who to give the treatment to first? Right? Okay, so concrete religious regulation, okay, and guidance can be very, very helpful. Not just to us as Muslims, we take it for granted, okay, and yes, for these issues, it will also be helpful, all right? But it can also be helpful, this type of approach to ethical questions can be helpful in the broader conversations, all right, which are going on, okay, also amongst non-Muslims. Now, that's if we're looking at fiqh from its actual, if you like, the role of fatwa, all right? But if we think about the logic of fiqh, and we think of fiqh and the jurisprudential disciplines, as forms of reasoning, again, they can be very, very useful for many of the questions which are emerging. Okay, so the logic of fiqh reasoning, okay, the discourse of usul al-fiqh itself can inform AI ethicists, okay, and companies' regulations, international regulations, and then also more local societal regulations. For example, okay, the weighing up of conflicting evidence. Right? How do you weigh up conflicting evidence? All right? Again, this is one of the core, practices of a mujtahid. Okay, that's what they do. All right, they give us a discrete fatwa, but what are they actually doing is they're weighing up conflicting evidences. All right. Okay, so could these systems, sophisticated systems which have been developing over 1,000 years, could they inform the way humans are programming artificial intelligence to deal with, benefits and harms? Like that vision of the self-driving car having to make decisions. Right? So it's relevant to, for example, the trolley problems. They call them trolley problems. This idea of, we've got a choice between, somebody's in a trolley, okay, do you pull a lever, okay, and it hits one person, or do you pull a lever and it hits another person, right? So actually the logic of fiqh, okay, if we think as a way of thinking, a way of reasoning, a way of ethics, can be very, very useful for thinking about some of these major questions. Fiqh again is primary, although often I've spoken about the role of reason when it comes to ijtihad and fiqh here, even here in this setting. Fiqh and usul al-fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, is fundamentally about the interpretation of texts, okay, and language, right? And there are very, very rich theories of language and interpretation which have been developed by Muslims, okay, again, over 1,000 years, right? We don't often see that when we just look at fiqh in terms of a fatwa, all right? So now, what's going on in a model, okay, so how many people have tried ChatGPT in the room? Okay, how many people haven't? Okay, about 50-50. All right, so for those who haven't, okay, you can ask these systems a question, any question, okay, and it will give you human-like responses. Okay, and the level of its response, all right, will be is to somewhat informed by the nature of your question. So ask him, give me a research proposal, okay, yeah, on XYZ topic. It will give me a research proposal. Ask him for, ask it or him or her, all right, for a poem. It will write you a poem. Okay. As I stopped to visit a family member on the way, and they said, "Oh, you're talking about artificial intelligence." We asked, "Who is the rightful successor?" Okay, of the Prophet, and ChatGPT said it is Ali ibn Abi Talib. All right. Okay. So, right. So it's this is how it works. But how is it working? All right, so I'm not a tech guy. There may be people in the audience who know it better than me, actually, how it works. All right, so these are what they call large language models. Okay, they're conversational, pre-trained transformers. All right, if I've got that right. Okay, yeah. So what's happening? Okay, is they're pre-trained. They're fed with lots of data. The data will inform the responses. Okay, now. That data, okay, is then used. It's not like a pure search engine, right? So it isn't just choosing that data and putting it in an answer for you, okay? They're predictive technologies, right? So they're predicting the links between language, all right, to give a response which is likely to be satisfactory to its audience or its questioner. Right? So now, even when we see that, I didn't say this to my, he may be listening, okay? All right, I didn't say this to my family member, all right? Is that, look, the question, who is the rightful successor to Ali ibn Abi Talib, okay, will have led, okay, the response, okay? The discourse of rightful successor, okay, is what type of discourse amongst Muslims? It's a Shi'i discourse, all right? So it's given a response which is very much informed by the question. Okay, right now, so you see, actually, there's lots going on here. Actually, the point that I wanted to make here is that they're reliant upon language models. Okay, and the training that they're going through is to try and increase their accuracy. So there is an attempt. They're not trying to give us misinformation, or not just trying to make us feel better by saying Imam Ali was the rightful successor. All right. No, they're trying to give accurate responses, but it's based on predictive technologies. So now, actually, legal theory, Islamic legal theory, usul al-fiqh, again, is basically dealing with probable interpretation of language. All right? So when you look at a juror, what does a jurist do? Okay, a jurist believes very little of the Quran, which is related to regulations, is explicit. All right? Sometimes this disturbs people when I say this, right? Okay, so when we say explicit in Islamic legal theory, we mean when a text has only one possible meaning. Only one possible meaning. Now, the majority of the language of the Quran, okay, is not of that nature. Yeah, it has, when you read verses of the Quran, it's very clear. It's almost certainly saying X. But there is a possibility of alternative understandings for the vast majority of the Quran. And this is how normal language works, right? Okay, yeah, you're listening to me, you can see I'm serious. But if you just heard me, you might think, okay, yeah, this is what he seems like he's saying, but he could be being sarcastic. He could be joking. He could be metaphorical. It's possible. My language right now is not explicit. It's probable language. All right, so Islamic jurists have developed systems for, when can they rely upon the probable interpretation of language? And when can't they rely on the probable interpretation of language? These are sophisticated language theories which could inform, okay, the developments of the actual programming, okay, yeah, of these types of technologies. All right, so I've given some examples how fiqh could be useful. It's concrete fatwa, can be useful for Muslims and for the broader discussions of non-Muslims. It's systems of reasoning. Okay, its language theories may also inform those broader conversations. And the overall vision of how does fiqh work, is also very, very important in terms of the sorts of discussions going on amongst ethicists. So I mentioned it briefly before, right? In ethics more widely, virtue is on the rise. Okay, so one of the most important, so people might have heard of utilitarian theories of ethics, where you go with the thing which creates the most benefit or creates the most happiness. Yeah, or you go with universal ideas of morality associated with people like Kant, and some human rights discourse, right? That there's universal truth. Actually, typically now, arguably the most dominant theory of ethics, which is widely informing broader ethical discussions, is increasingly about virtue. Okay? Yeah, so actually what we need to do is develop virtue. You develop akhlaq, right? And see, how can good virtues help us deal with concrete challenges, right? Now, what's happened in broader European, I'm simplifying a little bit here, right? I'm still probably being very complicated, so excuse me, right? In broader Western moral philosophy, you see kind of a separation between ethical discourse, which says virtue is important. Focus of ethics should be developing virtue. Okay, and ethical discourse, which focuses on duty, right? Deontology. Okay, right? So some people are saying that we need to work out what's our duty in any given situation. Others are saying, no, we should focus our ethical ideas around virtue and cultivation of character. And there's a separation. Islam's ethics doesn't see such a separation, at least in my reading, right? So fiqh is a duty-based system, right? Tell you ought to, ought not. Yeah, actions, regulate the action. But this has always been seen as complementary with Islam's virtue ethics, right? So Shahr Ramadan is coming. Yeah, okay. You have those who are capable, who are not in XYZ conditions, yeah, must fast from dawn till dusk, yeah, duty, right? But that duty is seen as a means to cultivating character, right? For cultivating restraint, cultivating humility, yeah, cultivating generosity, cultivating empathy, yeah? So the observance of Sharia rules, duties, are seen when we look at Islam's ethics holistically as a means to the cultivation of character. So again, this bringing together of duty and virtue is sometimes we internally forget, actually, all right, this instrumental vision of Sharia, but it's something which actually Muslims have to offer, okay, to the wider discussions around artificial intelligence and ethics. So duty, when regulated by rules, are a means in Islamic ethics to the cultivation of character and virtues. And this is something which can be very, very important in the contemporary discussions. I'll give the example of Psalm. We can give the example of zakat. And just one, I'm not sure how long I have, actually. I think I'm going slower than I should do. All right. I have a sense of time, sorry. I want to hear from you. Remember, I'm trying to give questions, okay? So, all right. So look at zakat. Okay, look at zakat. Okay, the duty of zakat giving. Wajib. Okay, again, conditions, X, Y, Z. Let's leave that stuff for now, all right? It's towards social moral growth. Actually, zakat is one of these people say, is this ibadah or is this mu'amalat? Okay, is it devotional or is it, interpersonal? All right, we first and foremost say it should be interpersonal, right? It's about the socio-moral goals and impact. Actually, typically is considered as ibadah, all right? Okay, why? Oh, I don't want to, flatten the discussion, but it's just as much, zakat, growth. One of the linguistic understandings of zakat is growth, okay? Nama'an fil rizq, okay? If we use Hazrat Fatima's interpretation of zakat, yeah? So yeah, giving is a means to socio-moral development for society. But the act of giving is intended as a means of purification and growth for me, right? Okay, so that duty is a means to the cultivation of character, okay? Ideally, right? Okay, and I'm going to come back to that example. So now let's come to AI. Give a more concrete example of some of its benefits and some of its challenges. All right, and I've set this up as saying thinking about the ethical issues around artificial intelligence, I think can be useful, not just for us to contribute to the conversations out there, but for our own thinking about Islam, whether that's at a scholarly level or whether that's at a lived practice level. Okay, so we talked about ChatGPT very briefly. Another place where artificial intelligence is being rolled out very, very quickly, okay, around us. There may be people here who are involved in this, right? Okay, is in bettering social care. Okay? All right, so look, the transformative potential for using artificial intelligence and the sorts of technologies we mentioned earlier on, okay, for delivering personalized care in an aging population, even if it's not an aging population, right? Even if there wasn't a social crisis of care around us, yeah, is obviously dramatic. Mm-hmm. Yes, at one end of the spectrum, people are talking, but not talking, they've been designed, they're being marketed, social robots, right, to look after the care of those who are in need, yeah? Virtual assistants. But more on the ground, if you like, more relatable to us, and definitely more present, is the use of remote monitoring and predictive analytics. Right, so what's happening? Okay, if you imagine in a care home or somebody who's using care, right, and there's smart sensors being fitted in care homes and in people who are in home care, receiving care at home, there's smart sensors being rolled out, okay, to collect data, yeah, about the regular habits, all right? When do they use the kettle, right? When do they use the toilet? When are they getting out of the bed? What's the temperature shifts in the rooms? Okay, now detection of significant changes in these patterns, all right, can initiate autonomously, it's AI, remember, all right, okay, a change in the management of the care, or even the treatment, all right? So they may reschedule the carers. So we might have a neighbor, or we might have a family member, a carer comes to visit them at 10 a.m. every day, okay? It might be in our own house, right? A carer comes at 10 a.m. every day. There may have been something through the night which could trigger a shift in the appointment such that they come at 6 a.m. because that's when we need them, right? Say, wow, this is revolutionary, okay? Yeah, it could trigger a doctor's visit. It could lead to the emergency services. So for the early detection of strokes, for example, all right, facial recognition in the mirror, and when people don't realize that they're having a stroke, okay, yeah, now, yeah, the cost to the NHS, okay, the cost to us as human beings, okay, of not acting, okay, on early detection of stroke, okay, is phenomenal, right? Again, this sort of audience, there will be some people who work in the health industry will recognize what we're talking about, right? So transformative potential for this type of personalized care should be very, very clear and stark. And we should realize, why is it being rolled out so quickly? Not just by capitalists, all right? Okay, by people who are very much concerned with delivering good care, all right? Okay, we may have had family members who pass away, and it's some time until they're found, right? So this type of technology, if I think about it carefully, why wouldn't I want it in my home, right? If I think about it from this perspective, right? So there's obviously life-saving applications. Yeah, for example, I've given the example of early detection of stroke, right? Now, yeah, there's this type of technology which is being rolled out, is being used even here in the UK context. There's lots of ethical discussions around it. Okay, very, very important ones. Yeah, primarily around data privacy. All right, yeah, do I want people to know what time I'm going? My parents don't, they're not on Life 360. So no, we don't want you to track us. Okay, was that just put yourself on Life 360 with me so I can, yeah? So no, okay, no, that's their son. All right, so privacy is something that we value. All right, so here we're talking about data privacy now. We say computers on a mass scale which are using this information. All right, yeah, AI algorithm bias. All right, so I mentioned the bias of the skin color. Right, the data that we're putting in is having an impact, on the analysis. So if there's better data for the care of Caucasians, then the use of these technologies will be better, will be worse, let's put it that way, will be worse for people from an ethnic minority background, right? So we've got issues around data privacy, issues around bias, reinforcing often societal discrimination, and inequalities. So you've got technologies which are being used, like when I just talked about the benefits, lots of nods around the room, all right? Okay, but serious questions. Look, exacerbating inequalities, okay? Now, these are questions which are on the table for AI ethicists. Even if we're not thinking about them, there's people who are thinking about them on our behalf. Muslims are not really involved in the conversation yet, to be honest with you, all right? But I want to flip that, okay, to just come back to this idea of rules, regulations, Sharia practice, fiqh, and virtue and akhlaq, right? So, okay, we could see how this type of technology can help us discharge our responsibility of care for others. Yeah? And even if we put it in crude fiqhy terms, we might say there's a wujub kifai, to look after those who are in need. Okay, we might say there's a wujub al-aini, to look after my parents. All right? So these types of technology can help me discharge that duty. Okay? But what about the caregiver? What about the caregiver? Okay, let's come back to zakat before I pack this off, right? So we said zakat, the act, the practice of giving, okay, leads to growth for others. But it also seems to me to be intended to allow for my growth, right? Such that it's placed as ibadah, not mu'amalat. Right? Now, my direct debits, or if I had direct debits which were giving charity, brilliant. Those direct debits to Salam Center, okay, direct debits to Salam Center, brilliant. Why? Because of the impact. It means that our trustees here know their income. They can more effectively, meet the aims of that zakat or khums or whatever else it might be. All right. So the socio-moral impact of the giving, thumbs up. Right. But if somebody's had a direct debit for the last 5 years to the Salam Center, have they experienced that act of giving something they're attached to? All right? Okay, actually, charities, from a charity point of view, we're often happy when the donor forgets they've got a direct debit. Okay? Yeah, I'm not saying cancel your direct debits here. I'm not saying that. All right? I said I want to ask questions, raise questions. All right? Yeah, what's happening to the virtue, okay, intended, okay, as part, it seems, okay, as part of actually the objectives of these rules and regulations and these duties when we're using technologies. All right? So, yeah, I'm sure I have missed out unless I've used my liberty in some other ways to positive ends, right? So, coming to the caregiver now. So we could say, okay, using artificial intelligence, technologies more widely for the delivery of social care can help me fulfill my responsibilities to other. But what about the caregiver? Okay, look, the time I spend with my elderly and with my neighbor, maybe it's more about me. Maybe it has more benefit for me. Right? So these are serious questions. These are serious questions. I'm not trying to say we don't use the technologies, but the use of the technologies and the increasing efficiency, if it frees me up, okay, to do other acts which may cultivate my character, alhamdulillah. If it's freeing me up, to simply pleasure seek and, abase my character, then, as religious people who are seeking development of others and self, we've got serious questions, all right? So it seems like caregiving in Islam, right, is partly directed at the formation of the ethical self and society. the actual acts of caregiving. So if we automate this stuff, what happens to society more widely? What will be the the knock-on effects? These are serious questions. Look, the pursuit of virtuous AI may impact the human pursuit of virtue. Yeah? And in what ways? So then we've got serious questions here. Remember I said questions about Islamic thinking and practice. Okay, in what ways is artificial intelligence or technology more widely actually helping us yield better care? Is it just more efficient or is it better? And what do we actually understand by better care? Okay, fick and some of the challenges of AI briefly, and I'm almost onto my last slide. All right. So look, Islamic ethics as a system of duty and virtue. You can see, look, thinking about these two things together, hand in hand. Yeah, Islam being a system which does give us duty, does give us rituals and rules. Okay, yeah, these are meant to be instrumental towards developing virtues, right? Okay, this can be a really productive lens, not just to contribute to wider conversations in artificial intelligence ethics, but also for our own practices, right? But if we're very honest, okay, contemporary Muslim approaches to applied ethics are dominated by a very legal reading of fiqh, okay, not a virtue-orientated reading of fiqh. Yeah, rather than seeing fiqh as being, a tool, if you like, all right, towards ethical development of self and others, yeah, or as one of many normative discourses within Islam. And fiqh, we have seen, is prone to instrumentalization, okay, and authoritarianism. These are risks, these are challenges, okay? Yeah, and we've seen that in examples of bioethics and Islamic finance, right? Where actually fiqh validated contracts can be a means for rampant capitalism, right? For example, okay? And look, these issues are arguably are being amplified with the challenges coming from AI ethics, because it isn't a capitalist framework. These things are being rolled out in a capitalist framework, right? So you've got capitalist intent, yeah, state logic, okay? There's an AI, arms race going on, all right? Identity politics, okay? These allow for the privileging of formal compliance to rules, at the expense of socio-moral goals. Now, socio-moral goals, not just for society, but also for self, all right? Recourse to, systems like maqasid and objective-based approaches to Sharia are still, underdeveloped, yeah, and often lacking in theoretical consistency. So, Islamic ethics and the big questions of AI. Sharia discourse, which we've said is often the first place Muslims turn, all right? It does have much to offer, all right? Both for Muslims and the wider debates about rules for the ethical regulation of artificial intelligence, especially when Sharia discourse is seen, it seems to me, as a discourse for interpretation. All right? Yeah, a place for philosophical deliberation, theological deliberation, ethical deliberation about the rules for proper living. But rules, frankly, are not enough. Okay? Yeah, for the questions which we started with. Yeah, questions of trust, privacy, progress. What does it mean to progress to give better care? Okay, I haven't touched on all of these today, right? Consciousness, yeah, and life itself. These are questions which are being explored, okay, on a relevant, a radically new rate, okay? Yeah, especially within the context of the interest of, economic blocks, nation states, yeah, and, yeah, multinational corporations. Islam has no fundamental problem with technological development. All right? Muslims past and present, have been at the forefront, not just past. Often we get this story, Muslims had. Okay, not even now. We could look at the room around us, okay? Muslims past and present are at the forefront of science and technology. But is this development, okay, yeah, to which we're using technology, is it consistent with Islam's theological and ethical commitments? These are the big questions. Yeah, where all creation belongs to God and returns to Him. Yeah, and felicity, sa'ada, yeah, is understood, human sa'ada, Yeah, is understood, yeah, in forms of understanding, ma'rifah, in service, ibadah, okay, or in stewardship, khilafah. It seems to me that we've got a collective duty to consider how the adoption of artificial intelligence, yeah, can make us more human. Right? Yeah, allowing us to pursue truly human, or maybe godly ends, okay, and not just seeking efficiency for efficiency's sake. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ahli bayti tayyibin at-tahirin.
We have some time for questions. Are there questions from either side?
I would love comments as well, because I know just, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, salam.
Thank you very much for that. I don't really know where to start. You kind of paint a picture of this, I don't know, this kind of AI encompassing all of life and turning life into this sort of very different model to what we know now. And perhaps it will be like that, and how we will not then be, as the caregiver, be able to provide, for example, for my elderly parents if I've got all these efficiencies. But I'm just wondering, I mean, the same thing you can argue about the many things that I've developed in life. For example, the fact that they have running water from the tap. Yeah, okay, I don't have to dig a well anymore. You know, while I would have spent 2 hours digging a well and providing for them, now they get it from the tap.
For sure.
Does that mean I am not, my
For sure.
caregiving duties have become less?
For sure.
Or, for example, the same with electricity. I don't have to go and do or cooking, or going to the shop, or hunting, or any of these things that we have done, and we don't, you know, it doesn't mean just because those things are available that my care provision to someone becomes less. It just becomes different.
Yeah.
That's all my...
Thank you so much. So, so I don't want to give so we've seen some recent Muslim contributions on the question of AI ethics, which have been exceptionally pessimistic, right? And actually, that's not what I want to do here, to be honest with you, right? So that wasn't my intent. I've really just shared some ideas, right? But so I'm not pessimistic about the potential and present use of AI. Okay, I think this is, it's revolution, it's brilliant. Okay, I just kind of hinted at it. I think think about it, artificial is problematic. Yeah, ultimately, this stuff is glorifying God for me, right? Okay, because there is no thing which does not glorify God, all right? So, everything has the potential, or everything is, according to the Quran, glorifying God, all right? So, you're giving me an opportunity to balance my discourse, right? In terms of your more specific question, a really important one. So, you see artificial intelligence, developments in artificial intelligence, just like the rest of the progress of technology and the use of technology in human society. And I think we can. The rate of change, though, may be different. So speaking to a colleague, some of you may know him here, former vice president at Microsoft, who was talking to me and saying that, look, he was going back to the 80s and 90s and saying, look, this internet's going to change things. Internet's going to change things. We're going around to community speak, internet's going to change things. Well, what's this internet stuff? It changed things. So his current view is that change will be nothing compared to the changes informed by artificial intelligence. Change doesn't mean bad. You're absolutely right. Again, change is normal. Okay, change is beautiful. Okay, change is filled with potential. Imam al-Hussein in Dua Arafah, says that Ilahi a'lamtu bi ikhtilaf al-athar wa tankilat al-atwar. Oh Allah, I've come to understand through all this movement, all this change, cosmological change. Anna muradaka minni an tata'arrafa ilayya fi kulli shay'in. Okay, that your intent for me is to be introduced to you through everything. All right, so change is no big deal. Okay, but the rate of change is dramatic. And change was beautiful for Imam Hussein, where it was a means of being introduced to God. All right? Our challenges here is that how are we going to use the time for the efficiency, right? So, if the increased efficiency of my caregiving to my parents allows me out of love, to give more care, whether it be to them or to others, this is beautiful, all right? Okay, of course, if it's freeing me up, all right, to, watch more Netflix, all right? Okay, this is gonna, it's not gonna have the same impact, right? It's not gonna have the same impact as me spending those hours, fetching water from a well for my parents. It doesn't have the same impact upon me, all right? So, I'm optimistic. Whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic about AI is irrelevant because it's here, it's moving quickly, right? All right, it is going to inform. It is informing our lives. It will inform our lives, right? Okay. I think some of the questions for us as Muslims, and whether that's just as in terms of our practice or our thinkers, is okay. How are we using these increased efficiencies? Yeah. Are we going to use them, okay, to allow us to pursue higher human ends, okay, or not? So it gives us a chance to think about what are we doing here. So if I don't have to go to work and I can claim a universal income, right? Okay, what am I going to do with my life? Yeah. See, these are the types of questions, right? I can say, you're great. I don't need to go and I don't even need to I don't need to design the architecture to bring the water. A robot can do it for me. So what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to just take the income? Okay, you take the furlough and watch Netflix? Or am I going to do something more productive? Yeah, so that's where I want to move the conversation. I think this is an important conversation. Yeah, but I agree. Actually, I was asked a couple of years ago, to speak in public about these issues. And there's a risk. I don't want to put people off the take-up of AI. Because if we put people off, we're adding to the inequalities, by the way. All right? We restrict our data. Yeah, that has an impact. But thank you. Excellent point. Excellent points, no doubt.
Then 3 questions, so we can be as short as possible so we can cover everyone. That would be great.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, an excellent discourse, very thought-provoking, and there is no choice, like you said. Just a comment. We are social human beings, emotions, positive energy, growth, giving and taking and caring. That's going to dissipate completely. And how does it impact our nerves going forward?
Sure. So
there's no emotions left because we will be forced into this AI.
So,
and how will Islam contribute to that?
Yeah. So I don't think it's. I don't think necessarily. Our relationships end and emotions end. Yeah. It's a question about how do we manage those changes? Okay, in the way we relate to each other, or the way we give care, or the way we give charity. I'm not saying stop doing direct debits. I think they're brilliant. Okay? Yeah, but we should recognize that, okay, look, there's space here for me to do something else. I need to do something else to purify myself now. All right? So my relationship with... And people are developing emotions with technology. And of course, we have lots of traditions which talk about, the prophets and the imams having relationships with what we would consider non-sentient beings. All right? Imam Ali with his sword, or whatever else it might be, okay? So I think emotions, how we relate, okay, to each other, and we saw it through the pandemic for different reasons, how we manage change, I think we should be doing it consciously. Okay, and reminding ourselves of, those fundamental Islamic objectives, if you like, of God centricity, moral development. So in the context of societal change, how can we continue to cultivate those aspirations of Islam and humanity more widely? Yeah, we can have emotions with robots. Yeah. We can. People are having emotions. People have emotions about their car, right? Some people love their car. Yeah? Okay, now I might feel it a bit, right? Okay, somebody's work is their second wife or their second husband. I'm being comical here, but it's just to say, look, well, how do we manage change is really important. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much indeed for your lecture. Just a question that concerns me, and apologies, I might have missed some of your lecturing, but it was me being out of the room. And if you've covered this, stop me and I'll listen to the recording. But what concerns me is what you said. There's a dramatic change, and it's exponential. You know, it's sort of, if we think about the last 50 years, the changes that have happened in the way that we interact is significant and continues to rise at exponential rate. So my concern is really around the discourse, and if we're not involved in the discourse, then what happens? Because in that dramatic change, there's a huge risk of chaos. And if you look at ChatGPT, GPT is generative pre-trained transformer. So if you're not part of the pre-trained, what happens to an understanding of Islam before we even get to the point of ethics?
Yeah, absolutely. So, maybe I did say some things relevant to the question early on. We have to be part of the conversation. We have many valuable things to contribute to the conversation, the wider conversation. And if we don't, we are being impacted by not being part of that conversation. And when I say that conversation, it's at both levels, both in terms of those discussions which are going on for the regulation of these things and the development of these technologies, but also like this about how is it impacting my practices, or doesn't necessarily have to impact my practice, okay, as this excellent comment was before, right? But if we don't think about these things, we've got serious issues. ChatGPT, pre-trained. What's the data is being trained on? So I was in conversation with with a Seattle-based think tank just last week, and of course, although their ChatGPT, and I think it's the 4.0 can operate in 4 languages, right? But the pre-training is based in English. So when I ask a question in Arabic, it will first translate it to English, okay, and then respond based on English, okay? So never mind just there's loss there. There's huge loss there. So no doubt, we have to be involved. I think we have a collective duty, actually. We have a collective duty to try to be involved, at least to be aware, and to be conscious, okay? And it can help us use these technologies more responsibly, if nothing else. Even if we say, look, it's a closed shop, I can't get in, we can get in. Look, as I introduced this talk, the reason I'm interested in it is because there were people involved in the industry seeking Muslim input. So they reached out to me, okay? Somebody who doesn't have expertise in the area, right? So they want us involved in the conversation, right? But even if we can't get involved in the conversation, okay, that's just a talking shop, it's lip service, it's just equality, EDI discourse, right? If we don't think about this stuff, we don't understand how to regulate at our local level. And local level regulation, how we're using these technologies are really, really important because they've become part of our ethical formation, right? Okay, how we use Facebook, how we use technologies, how we use the water, these are part of our ethical formation. So we need to think about these things and see them as opportunities as well. But pressing ones.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your lecture. If possible, could we go to your last slide, if possible? And I'll ask the question as you're going into it. I think the last comment was how collective duty, along the lines of collective duty, makes us human. But building on what Sabra Aunty said, it's not only duty, but it is this idea of feeling. And further up, you said rules are not enough for questions of trust, privacy, progress, and consciousness and life. And I think one of the big drawbacks of artificial intelligence is its inability to give value to privacy, trust, and progress. And I see AI as an extension of the problems that we already have in society, in a capitalistic society, where we're very good at producing things, but we're somehow left empty at the end, after all this progress. So how, I think, as Muslims or as people that want to progress, how do we go about giving value in a system that only understands value to the unseen aspects of life? And if you look at our industries where women sort of slightly dominate, teaching, midwifery, nursing, these are all caring industries, but yet the system cannot fathom how much caregiving takes out of a human being and how important it is. And if we take that away, then we're empty shells. So I'm all for AI, but I think there's a big hole that nobody seems to be able to answer on how do we value, like literally value, even if it's on sort of just seen terms, the unseen.
Yeah, yeah. So, excellent set of comments and questions. So, I think there really are. So, the types of questions which artificial intelligence is raising, can help us to rethink some of our theological and philosophical assumptions about what do we mean by value. Okay, what's the role of emotion? Okay, yeah, from you positioned it really nicely actually. Typically pre-modern Muslims, would say, what's a human? It's a rational animal. Okay, so natik. All right. Okay, so actually this can do the rational stuff. If it can't now, there's a limit. When they say artificial intelligence now, don't be too simplistic about it. We can imagine these technologies doing the rational stuff better than we can. So now can we re-ask what it means to be human? Right, so actually the proliferation of artificial intelligence can help us rethink what is really valuable. Okay, maybe it is emotion, maybe it is love. Maybe these are the distinctive human characteristics. Okay, yeah, rather than reason and logic and mathematics and statistics. Yeah, very much so, very much so. What these are, I think we can reopen these questions in light of artificial intelligence, right? So it can help us reassess. Look, even when we see how pre-modern Muslim jurists have conceptualized even akhlaq, right? It's the superiority of the rational soul, okay, over desire and anger. So again, reason, a hierarchical, almost patriarchal vision of reason, okay, underlines theories of akhlaq. All right. So if we see that, okay, non-humans can do this stuff, is that a prompt for us to rethink what it means to be human? All right, which may give us actually a rich vision, yeah, of what it means to have rahmah, okay, that divine quality of God or feminine quality of God, yeah, okay, which is about unqualified giving. Yeah. So I think these questions. Actually, I think this is a beautiful opportunity, not just for us to be more thoughtful about our practices, but also our ideas. Actually, yeah. So when I say collective duty to consider, this is what I mean by consider. Actually, we need to think, what does it mean to be human? We have a responsibility to think, what does it actually mean to be human? Okay, yeah, what should we be striving for? Yeah, and I think AI gives us not a black mirror to think about these questions, but a mirror. Yeah, I don't want to say it gives us a dark mirror to think about these questions. It gives us a mirror, and these are really, really important questions.
I'm really sorry, but we will have to end there. But there are a few other questions that people have. Inshallah, they can come and ask you afterwards. Thank you very much. Salawat ala
Can I just, so if you don't mind, just a quick sum-up comment. Right? So actually, I just wanted to raise these discussions. I think they're really, really important questions. Okay, and I don't claim to have answers. Yeah, I think we've got questions at all levels. There's jurisprudential questions, there's ethical questions, there are theological and philosophical questions. Yeah? But these can be enriched. There's a lot of potential. I'm excited about these questions, actually. All right, okay? So these are exciting opportunities, yeah? But they're pressing ones. Okay? Yeah, and thank you for giving me the chance to share and listen to your comments. Yeah, well, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a few quick announcements. We have our regular events on Sunday, Tafsir and the Soul Kitchen Food Bank and Hosseini Madrasa. On Tuesdays, yoga and ladies exercise classes. Wednesdays, Junjo Kai martial arts. Thursday, Dua Kumal and Surah Yasin. And Fridays, we generally have our Salam talks. And Saturdays, we have badminton for young children. Tomorrow we have the cleanup day here at Mefl at 10 a.m. Please do join if you have the opportunity to. And of course, Ramadan, inshallah, will be starting and we will be sharing out more information. Or you can go to sikkim.org.uk/Ramadan. Thank you very much. Salat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad.